deep comments because we're probably late like idiots.
Well, Jeremiah, if you're in Chicago, you probably had Dark Matter's Malort aged coffee, right?
It's I had a tiny little sip and I don't remember.
It was
like
bad.
At the end of the night, like blown.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, whatever. That's crazy. And, I don't know.
It was something else. It was something else. That's for sure.
It's actually it was brewed in Florida for a while. Now CH Distillery bought the rights and pulled it back into Chicago, which is cool.
Oh, interesting.
And I found out that the place that they're brewing in was like there's this old historical brewery that was just west of where my wife and I lived in the city before, like pre-kids.
Malort
And I used to drive past it on the way to the grocery store all the time. We were like, oh, it's Schoenhofer building. Not Schoenhofer. I'm gonna screw up the name. I'll tell you guys later. But they bought it and like turned it into a distillery, which is super cool. So, anywho.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are live for everybody out there in YouTube land. What's going on? I'm glad for you guys to join us tonight. Cool little hang we have going on here. This is a little bit of everybody's doing, but this is mostly, I believe, Sean's motivation to get this running, right, brother?
And Kyle.
And Kyle.
It was we kind of spearheaded it together.
Take the credit.
Yeah. So we're going to be doing a little bit of hangs with all the people you normally know, and then we have Jeremiah over there from Hot Butcher for the World. What's going on, brother?
Thanks for having us. Us.
Yeah. Jude's on the screen down there. He just happens to have all his lights off, and he's mute, so he's not going to provide much to the stream. But you know,
five seconds of talking on my first Google Hangout with you guys, and I'm fumbling all over my words.
Yeah. Well, listen,
I'm honored in the presence of such greatness. Can't even.
It's not the first time I've heard that one. Anyway, but yeah, so this is kind of a long time coming because, you know, when did we start kind of chatting back and forth, Jeremiah? Originally, was it about 2 years ago?
Oh man, a couple years ago for sure, at least.
Well, because I know it had to be at least 2 years ago because I moved here to New Jersey. I believe it was 2 years ago in February of this year, and I believe I just moved in when we did our podcast. So it had to have been almost 3 years, maybe. From then.
I was sending beer for a little bit before you switched your address on me.
Yeah. And then we did the podcast, and that was really janky stuff because it was like me trying to like work it a specific way and trying to figure everything out how to do it like Skype wise, and it was just, you know, a nightmare. But it came out halfway decent. And then from there, it's always been kind of like, for me and you personally, a kind of like, hey, let's actually meet up in real life, come to Chicago, let's get shitty. And that never happens because I'm a curmudgeon and I never leave my house. And then eventually, what was it, probably about 4 or 5 months ago, you're like, you know anybody else on YouTube that kind of is a cool? And I said no. And then I said, but there's some people that are halfway decent.
All right.
And then you're pretty much looking at them. All three of them minus Joe from the Beer Patrol, who's kind of, I don't know, he's an enigma wrapped in a riddle.
I always held the belief that if you can't get it, you're not going to talk about it. And when some of you guys who are gifted with the palates to like dissect beer, peel back the layers of the onion known as beer, it comes off to people who make the beer, who maybe have like an appreciation for what you guys do, that you guys kind of understand what our intent was. And so often, like, people, when people try a beer, when drinkers drink a beer, they decide whether they like it or they not. It's either good or it's bad. And very rarely, whether it's a 3-minute video or a 12-minute video, can you hear someone take the time to really try to experience all the bins or all the beers that are running out of a beer. So when we try to be nuanced, or we try to let hops paint a picture, you know, in my short experience with the other three in the last couple of years of listening to you talk about our beers, been fun. And I usually try to describe it as, I'm like, oh, I could listen to that guy read a phone book. That's usually the easiest and most simplest way to talk about why we, take time and inventory out of our every week with releases to try and get you guys beer and see what you think. But some of the things that you guys talk about inform, what we put on the back of our cans. We do, if it's a brand new beer, we do our best to use our experience to make those tasting notes. But they're not always 100% spot on, depending on what lots, of hops we have or what beer we're brewing. So, when we have second, third, fourth, fifth iterations of some of the beers that I send you guys, and I'm looking at the label before I submit an order for cans, and I remember, Matt, I remember Matt saying something like he picked this or that up, like a watermelon on this or so beer, and then like I'll try to change those descriptors to just constantly be more and more accurate. So it's been it's a fun little journey that is important for the company and brewers, but it's also fun just like sitting on my couch during quarantine, searching for your channel and seeing that you guys popped up, or posted a new video. Like that's cool stuff to us.
Yeah, and my whole lead into that was, and you kind of covered a decent amount of it. Like, there's some breweries that actually do kind of focus on non-traditional kind of outlets when it comes to beer and getting their beers out there. Because you send beers to obviously us here, but then there's people, you like Greg from Greg's Beer Reviews, and then I seen you sent the guys from French Haw some beers, and then a couple other beer tubers. When did you decide to focus on YouTube like that? And have you seen any kind of movement as far as the popularity of your beer and who sees it and who talks about it and who wants it based off of strictly YouTube, or just the analytics aren't that easy to kind of dive into?
Yeah, no, it's hard. It's I feel like if you can get 8 things moving in the general direction, you can say that it's working, but it's hard to source it back to a specific channel, or unless you read a specific comment. But I will say this, 6 days ago, we were talking with with our friends at Homegrown, who handle Boston for us when we do send beer out that way. And one of the guys was like, "Oh, I see these YouTube reviewers talking about your beer all the time." And I was like, "Hey, it's working!" That's why that's one of the many reasons we do that. But I think that it's 8 different things, from what we put out on social media to what you guys talk about to just random people who trade beer in Chicago who maybe aren't watching YouTube but are sending beers to their friends across country, and all of that kind of works in the same vein as like if we were pouring at a fest, in New York. We're at New York Craft Beer Week, or we're at IPA Fest in Boston, and those are usually the reasons we'll go into a market out of state or out of Illinois or even Wisconsin. It's just a couple hours away, but what it turns into all depends on how people react to the beer, and sometimes they react to the beer because of what they heard you guys talking about. So like, it's just this, I don't want to start using corporate speak, but like it's a cool symbiotic relationship of people who watch you and people who want to send you beers, and then people who make beer that should want to send you guys beers, because how fun is that? And you guys have a little bit of that arbiters of taste thing going on for people who watch your channel. But if I were making decisions on out-of-state distribution based on how many subscribers you guys have, like that, I feel like that would be super lame. I just like sending you guys beer.
That's a valid point given our subscriber base.
No, if I watch a video and it's entertaining, I'm game to send you guys beer. That's as much thought as it has to go into it, and unless you hate everything I send you and you're like, here again, it's part of our week. We self-distribute, we're invoicing, we're making beer, we're tasting, we're rubbing hops together, like when we can get together. And part of those distro days is packing stuff up. So cool. It brought us together.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I think I always wondered how often brewers use. I guess in the beginning, probably Beer Advocate, right? Like the ratings there, and then obviously now Untapped is, I guess probably the easier way to kind of do the same style of rating system when you're on the go. So I guess I was more curious. I think Kyle and I were talking about this, like what's the marketing behind, I guess, sending it. I don't think I ever thought of how you explain like we're at least peeling back the onion, at least more so than I guess like an Untapped review would do. Yeah, people do get kind of in depth in Untapped, so I guess it's interesting to hear the actual reasoning behind it.
Yeah, no, I mean we pay attention on tap too. I just think you get such a mixed bag of what people are giving you on there, right? Like sometimes you get a paragraph, sometimes you get nothing, sometimes you get
Yeah.
something in between, and you try to pay attention to that aggregate average of a beer that updates once a day. But even then, if someone doesn't like a style, but it's really well made, it's 2.5 caps out of 5, and
Right.
Yep.
then like what is that really telling you? So I think taking that extra step that you guys take, and kind of being an extension of our sensory panel is way more helpful than I ever thought it would be when I started sending Matt beer. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's not just for the descriptions on the can or the tasting notes that we put on the back of every can. It's just us as brewers, us as hop heads that rub hops and decide what lot we want of this, and kind of deciding what we prefer. Um, but it all kind of plays together, and that I think is more valuable to us than trying to sell an extra 4-pack at a store because someone heard of us. Although, Kyle, you said you saw beer at one of your stores, right? Because we
Yeah,
moved out.
actually, two of them right by me. One 10 minutes, one 15 minutes from my house. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I didn't even know which ones they were going to. I just knew we had made a New York drop, so I didn't want to tell you about it and then find out it was completely across the state from you. But
Yeah.
those types of things start when we do like out of state events. Like we don't just start making pallet drops in other states just for funsies. Like usually it's because we poured it at an event and it went well when we were in town, and the distributors followed up, and we like working with them, and that was a cool text to get.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was cool to like just pop up on social media, and it's like, oh, it's not us posting it; it's a local bottle shop. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a kid down here in Jersey. He said he was going up to New York. It was last week, and he's like, "Where should I go? Where should I go?" Because he was going up to a couple of breweries up in lower upstate New York. Like he was going to Equilibrium and a couple other beers up here that up in that area. And I was like, "Oh, you got to go to these bottle shops. They do great stuff." And he's like, "Oh, the site has stuff on the on their site. What they have. What should I pick up?" And I saw, I believe it was. I forget which beer it was actually, but I saw it. I was like, "What?" I'm like, "Pick up the Hot Butcher," but I don't know.
Nice.
I don't know where they got this, and I was going to bring it up here. So it's kind of interesting that Kyle actually saw it too. Was that? And you said you do that because you're going to go to a state and you have like you've poured there and you had a good response. Were the drops in New York because you went and had a good response? It was something pre-done and COVID kicked it to the side, but you still dropped off beer. Like, where did
No,
this particular drop
so
come
what
from?
we'll do, I mean, typically if we're pouring in an out-of-state event, we're not driving, we're flying, or
Yeah.
the crew there, and we need to sign on with a distributor to get our kegs for the fest into the state and to the beer fest. And so since we're doing that, we figure, all right, well, why don't we pull 15, 20 cases of 2 or 3 different beers, and tell this awesome distributor who's already bringing our beer into town, hey, pick 3 or 4 shops that you love the most, and then let us know where you go with them, so that when we're standing behind our table at the fest pouring for people who have never had our beer before, if they like it, we'll pull out our phone and be like, do any of these places look familiar? And we did a lot of that in Minnesota. We did it at IPA Beer Advocates IPA Fest in Boston, and that's what kicked that off. New York Craft Beer Week, that kickoff event we went out for, and that went really well. And so those are the types of ways we like make the decision to come into a state. But even then, we're not looking to make like a regular or permanent entrance into the state. We're just looking to drop a pallet or 2, see what people dig, and then maybe come back later that year if things go well. But New York, Boston, Portland, Minnesota, Tampa, like those are some of the markets where things have gone well and they've come back, and Jude and I are like let's chill out a little bit. Let's not do too much out of state, because we always said we never wanted to just go out of state for no reason. So that's typically like it's an organic relationship builder for us. And if we have a really great time in NYC at that craft beer week, and we're well received, and why not send 2 different beers out there? And, and you know what else is really cool as a brewer and a beer fan in this market is when other breweries do that here, right? So Other Half, Equilibrium, you mentioned them. They everybody likes to hit Chicago a couple times a year, so it's fun to kind of be part of that crowd and also get to experience other breweries doing that as a beer drinker.
Well, what are you guys at right now as far as volume? Like, are you still brewing on the same system? Have you expanded much? I assume you're still at Miskatonic, right?
Yep. So we maximize our stuff out of there. We also brew at a second facility, which allows us to do some bigger batches, not that far away, maybe 20 minutes east of Miskatonic, at a place called Five Rabbit. And I think that puts us right around 7,000 barrels.
Okay.
7,100. We got a self-distribution cap in Illinois to keep our eyes on.
Oh, really?
And you can only distribute up to 7,500 barrels in Illinois.
I did not know that.
We're teetering on that threshold, but it's funny because back when we had one tank and we were only doing 100 cases of a different beer, it was like, where are we going to go with all this beer? And now we kind of have the fun problem of just wanting to make more and keep bringing back those old favorites, and also satisfy that itch to brew a this and that hopped beer, that we haven't yet. Like what are those bucket list hop combinations that we haven't gotten to yet, that we just, so we're still itching to kind of find more capacity and do more and more constantly, but not get too ahead of ourselves. So
what and guys, you get I'll steamroll you all day, so if you want to ask shit, just jump in. But with
the beer and I don't know, I haven't had a beer today. We're 30 minutes into
I'm gonna go grab it.
Video, and I'm sorry, I poured the beer.
He started without
talk about this beer immediately, but I just felt like I was breaking some social rules pouring this beer. But
do you, Kyle? Do you have the can in front of you?
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have ever noticed this, but we put a double perf on the drink label, which is super fun to. Sometimes it takes a bit to get it started, but it allows you to zip the entire label off, and we did that to make it easier on local recycling centers to recycle the aluminum.
Oh.
Some people mistakenly think we do this for the people who like shotgun.
But my favorite thing about this label is, and honestly, I cannot give you kudos enough for this, is that you named it a deeper dish, not a deeper dish pizza, because Chicago deep dish pizza isn't pizza. So it's good that you actually, it's good that you didn't put the word pizza on it. That's not shots, it's facts.
You got pour like Mike, by the way, guys. He's the one pouring right here.
Yeah, I always forget. I got it.
Thank you for part of that, Matt. Not the part where you said it's not Chicago pizza. But if you remember, and I don't know, maybe you guys haven't, and I wouldn't blame you for it, but this is essentially a beefed up version of Tavern Cut. So Tavern Cut is Citra and Vic at 7.5%. That's our hazy double IPA. This is just a triple IPA version, I think I was trying to call it earlier today, of that beer. And Tavern Cut is real Chicago pizza. It's just thin crust. Deep dish is like special occasion pizza. If you ask.
Graduations.
Exactly. Graduation. It's like once a month on a Friday pizza night is when you get your deep dish. But if you're looking for that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday evening, watching a TV show on the couch, you're getting Tavern Cut.
So the old address that you shipped stuff to before I moved down here in Jersey was a place called Duryea, Pennsylvania. About 3 miles away from Duryea is a place called Old Forge, who says they have the rights to Tavern Cut Pizza. It's Old Forge Pizza, not Tavern Cut Pizza, and I want Chicago just to come and just beat everybody up in that town because it's worse. Yeah, fucking.
I want to show you
Pizza.
guys this too. That we had Dan do. So you guys know Dan kicks out all of our labels, and I think he's one of the best decisions we've made as a brewery. Is just
It's amazing.
asking him to do everything for us.
Yeah.
And, in the beginning it was, like I said, once a month, and now it's like 8, and some of 4 of those are old beers, so we can bring them back and tweak this or that. But he's doing stuff constantly for us. But whenever there's a lull or when we're bringing back a higher number of returns and he's got a little extra time, we'll ask him to like do things for T-shirts or for glassware. And this, let me see if you can see it. We asked him to do this glass for us with like Hot Butcher and like drippy cheese pizza lettering, and we put it on a teku.
That's epic.
So I busted my Tavern Cut teku out for this game.
That's awesome.
The you're talking about this beer being, what is it, triple IPA? You're coming at 10.5%. I seem to be skewing a little bit more towards heavier ABV beers as of late. Because when I first started getting beers from you, not that you didn't do 7, because almost all your beers were what, 7.5? I think that's like your.
Yep.
Yep, 7.5 for most of them, but then there was most of it sprinkled downward. There was a lot of lower ABV, hazies, pales, stuff like that, and 5%. Now it seems like on the flipped. Is that just skewing to market want and market avail because that's what people dig, or is it just more just the ebb and flow of creating beer?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, like I said, sometimes you get really excited about an idea, or you have like a pale ale and you're like, this hop combo is so awesome, and you envision what that would taste like with a little more heft to it, and then all of a sudden that rockets to the top of our our to-do list. And Vic's Secret and Citra is definitely one. We definitely got on a food kick, neon green relish, beef dipped, Tavern Cut, deeper dish, stuff like that. But you also could look at our entire roster of beers and pick out like Double Grid, Tavern Cut, beef dipped, Dun Dun Dun, Galaxy Bowl, and all of those are double IPAs. And now having tasted this beer, which I haven't done yet, by the way, cheers.
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 That shit's dangerous, son. That's like that's danger in a glass.
Our brewers, who are both named Justin, we have 2 Justins, and they're both rad, have just waved this magic wand where like we get together and we talk about what we want to brew, or what hop combos we want to start with, or we want to try this out on this specific double IPA recipe or triple, and really just kind of let that drive the conversation of, oh, you know what I really want to try? I want to try an El Dorado and a Nelson hazy pale ale. And then we'll look at the 2 or 3 or 4 different hazy pale recipes we have and decide which one would suit that beer best. And so, yeah, you're right. Like, and then it kind of teeters back over to the other side where you're like, double grid, like Citra and Mosaic on a hazy double. If we just goose it by 3% and see what that heft does to that hop combo, I feel like that's going to be mind blowing. So then we add that to the top of our list and we try to find a place in our production schedule. But before you know it, you're sitting out in your back porch and having a beer and you're enjoying the nice weather. Like, oh my God, I can only drink half of these or one of these. Where's our pails? And then you're like, oh my God, it's been 8 months since we brewed a pale ale. So let's get one of those in. And the Eldo Nelson one that I just mentioned is actually in the tanks now. And the brewers were both, Justin and Justin were both raving about it, which was kind of exciting to hear. So I'm sure you guys will get that one at some point once it's done, but we haven't quite gotten to canning day yet, and they're hyping it up for me.
That's awesome.
This is like Matt said, very dangerous. It doesn't taste like a 10.5% beer. The mouthfeel is just gorgeous. It tastes a lot lighter. You know what I mean? It doesn't have that alcoholic kick. You can really get in a lot of trouble with these.
Yeah, no doubt. And thank you. That's kind of what we aim for as well, but not because we want people to get in trouble on that side of things, but more because if you can deliver it in an enjoyable to drink body and mouth feel, you can let the ingredients paint the picture. And I like to say paint the picture because we try to build whatever foundation or canvas for the hops or for the ingredients that we're featuring to express the freshest, the most delicious, citra lot we can get our hands on. And if we can do that, usually I feel, more aptly done, without like getting a booze bomb in your mouth when you
or even the opposite, which is like a sugar bomb. There's so many like triple IPAs that are like under attenuated, like just sweet on sweet on sweet on sweet. And while this is not going to be confused with not being sweet, it's not overly sweet. There's enough sweetness there to complement it, and that's what makes it drinkable. Because you have a lot of people that do like an 11% beer, but then it's like so much residual sugar, it's insane.
Yeah. And you saw a lot of that too, under attenuation when the style first started taking off. Or it's just like, oh, we just need to stop the fermentation. It's like, no, you don't. You need to start higher, end higher, but you still need to finish that fermentation off. We had our bumps and we took our licks along the way. I mean, we every beer we've done hasn't been amazing, especially when we first dove into this style. We had a lot to learn. We still have a lot to learn. I feel like we've hit a cool stride here where we can do what we think is best for the beer and put something tasty out. But, crossing those T's and dotting those I's as far as the brewing process is concerned and nailing your attenuation for what it should be and making sure you're adding the right ingredients at the right time so it doesn't get too dry or it's not too sweet or there really isn't a thing as too juicy, although I think we've gotten dinged on Untapped for that at some point. This is too juicy. But if we can put something in your glasses, you guys taste 10 times more beer, more different beers than I will in a year, in an entire year, and you think this is something that you would buy, then I feel like we're trying to give people a reason to come back and trust us, but also learn something, whether it's the tasting notes on the back or the hops listed on the front. We've seen a lot of our accounts come back at us and be like, it's really cool that you guys do that because now I have people coming into my shop saying, hey, do you have any other beers with Big Secret in it or with El Dorado? And, don't stop doing that. And that's always a cool note of encouragement as well.
I'm of the camp where I like knowing what's in the beer. So I love that it has the hops, the tasting notes. And I said this in a recent review of your stuff. Sometimes I like to not read the tasting notes, see what I get. And then as I'm reviewing, read the tasting notes. And then sometimes I like to read them and then compare it to what I'm getting. But once you read them, then it's in your head. So is it somewhat, or because it's in your head, I'm getting some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Are we describing the same thing two different ways, or is what I'm saying a different thing than what's on the can? But I've really enjoyed that process. But I do like that you guys put the hops on the can, which leads me to one of the questions I wanted to ask you, Jeremiah, especially with a name like Hop Butcher. I mean, you guys have done other styles. Do you ever feel like you're like boxed in, like, oh, well, maybe we should do a stout, but we're Hop Butcher, like.
Never.
Stouts have hops, man.
Never. Yeah. I mean,
it wasn't an overly, the one we've had wasn't an overly hopped stout, I mean, it wasn't like, was it a black IPA or is it a stout kind of a thing? It was obviously a stout.
Yeah. No, we've never made a gruit. And as far as I think I know, that's the only style that doesn't use any hops, although I'm sure you could prove me wrong.
It's supposed to.
I mean, we honestly, we nerd out in front of our little 15-barrel fermenter that we almost exclusively use for lagers, like nerding out over the hops that we're using in the Pilsner, honestly. And then we drink that, and then we're like, oh, what if we made like a Medusa hopped Pils? What if we use that strain or this strain? And that's some of the most fun parts of beer. Having hop Pils. That doesn't that doesn't preclude us from getting overly excited about a certain like craft maltster, or we found this maltster out of Fort Collins, Troubadour Maltings, and their white wheat malt is our favorite of all time. So we'll bring in a pallet of just their white wheat and we'll stuff it in a bunch of different beers and see how that changes. or we'll find someone in North Carolina, like Riverbend, and we'll pick up their pail or their 2-row or this or that, and then we'll go and just really try to mix and match stuff to see, of course, in the spirit of making better beer, but what happens if you just change this one variable, this one and this actually leads me to another point, which I thought you guys would find interesting, and Mike got a little preview when we were messaging last night. One thing I think as a brewer that we've learned the most from, but also that I specifically underestimated the most, is how big of a difference selecting hops makes in your beers. Most brewers buy on spot, bigger brewers will contract the hops, but once you have the opportunity to smell, sniff, rub 6 different types of Citra and pick the one that you think works the best, you'd be surprised how big of a leap that gives to your beers when you plug that one in compared to what you just bought off spot, which is basically a random whatever the company has. And we've seen that with not only new beers and complementing certain hop combinations that we've been wanting to do, but beers that we feel are maybe tried and true, like Double Grid, Citra and Mosaic. What could go wrong? But hand select your Mosaic, hand select your Citra, and then put those two together, and you got a beer that's just a good amount better than it did last year. That's been super encouraging, but also one of the more fun and entertaining parts of having a beer.
And then, just so you know, your mic's cutting out a little bit in a weird way. I don't know if that's something on your end or our end, but we can hear you, but the mic's cutting out a little bit here and there. To speak on the hop portion of the show, and this is something I was really curious about, and it's more just a commentary rather than a question. I guess it's a question. What's it like to spearhead specific hops that end up being something that a lot of people dig? Because I go to Sabro, and a lot of people got Sabro became such a gigantic hop, and then when it started to get really big, a lot of people are like, Sabro's awesome, it's this new hop, have you tried it? I was like, actually, I had a Hop Butcher beer 2 years ago with Sabro in it. You know what I mean? Like when you fuck with hops, because that's what you guys do. And then you see a hop take off. What do you think about that? Obviously, you're like, okay, not that you spearheaded it being awesome. The hop's awesome. You just helped get it out into the public. But 2, it's almost like a bet, like a future bet in football or sports. And does your hop guy go, okay, you guys led the charge on this hop. If you ever need it, let me know. You're in on the front door, because I assume that happens a lot, especially now with COVID, with supply chain. Hop procurement might be a little bit more dodgy. So what's it like kind of seeing a hop from an infancy to something that people get gaga over?
So I would say the number one thing that's rewarding as brewers is watching someone drink a beer and enjoy it, right? So whether or not it's someone checking it in on tap or watching your videos, that first and foremost, the fact that someone got it and liked it, or chased it down, left work early, went and bought your beer, and Jude and I spent a lot of time thanking people for heat seeking our beers, and that really truly, I'm not trying to be cheesy, that genuinely is number one for us. But number 2, a close number 2 is diving into those hops and trying to find the ones that are able to deliver what you just described, right? So we'll try 12 different experimentals over the course of a year, and some will make a beer, some won't, and not all of them will be great. But then one of our brewers is going to open up that first bag of Strata and text us oh my God, I rubbed Strata today, and I think it's my new favorite hop. It rubbed pink lemonade and weed. And that gets us excited about it. So we pair it with Citra, and that beer comes out, and then we're it's Mosaic and Strata, and then it's Simcoe and Strata, and then it's Vic and Strata, and then you watch us just throw it down the gauntlet of all the hops that we love. And then after that, it'll maybe make the other combinations where we're mixing 3 or 4 hops. And then you have the other ones that are experimentals, they're numbers, and you'll see us maybe mix some of those with what we think will complement them, and maybe that brings something cool or whatever. But yeah, I mean, Strata and Sabro, it's funny that you say that because we heard from a couple other people, like, oh yeah, you guys use Sabro or you guys use Strata. Like, yeah, Hop Butcher used Strata a couple times, and that's a super cool thing to hear because that feels like maybe we're living up to our namesake a little bit, but also like that's the satisfying thing for us. We're doing what we're doing and trying to make the best beers possible, but like finding those new hops that we can put on our can, that we can pair with work, and also accomplishing the part where you guys enjoy drinking them and the people are like, you got to make this one again, or when are you going to bring this one back? Like, and that ties into the supply chain that you're mentioning too, right? So all those hop farmers, all those brewery suppliers, we pester the hell out of those brewery suppliers every week. Jude and I are probably on the spot list, like for every company that sells hops that we buy from on the regular, twice a week at least, just trying to see if something exciting pops on. When we're doing the hop selection thing, we're meeting with farmers and asking them what they think is next, or what they're excited about, and we're trying to get just 11 pounds of this or 44 pounds of that, and like, let's just give us a little bit, let us use it in a beer, and hopefully that is the next latest and greatest hop. But we also still kind of retain that that appreciation for like hops that just can't seem to miss, like Citra, Mosaic, and Simcoe. And those are two are also fun when we pair those go-to hops and give you guys a beer with them, and then you guys are kind of, I talked about peeling the layers apart or peeling the onion back, like you're like picking like, oh yeah, I see what Strata's bringing to the beer there, and then like I'm getting some of that Simcoe, but maybe that cat pee Simcoe isn't there. It's this instead. But like don't underestimate that. Like when you guys are using those descriptors and you're drinking beers that brewers sent you, or like, make no mistake, brewers are watching Untapped. They're watching YouTube. They're searching their own name and beer names to try and see if people are digging them or what they're saying about them. And what you guys say and what people say out there matters, and we see that, and that's usually encouraging. You try not to let the negative stuff, if there's that kind of stuff out there, get to you. But if there's 9 people who like the beer for every one that doesn't, like, I think
yeah, I mean, it's Charles Darwin, it's survival of the fittest, just like
Well, I saw one. I was talking to a restaurant owner once, and he was saying like it was hard to trust like Yelp and all those reviewers, because it's like the angry people are the people that are doing the reviews. It's not the people that are happy. Like I don't go on Beer Advocate. I don't go on Untapped. I don't really rate beers. Like I don't go on Yelp to to shit on restaurants. If I don't like it, I just walk away. But I do know people that's like their big revenge plot. Like, oh, I didn't like that, I'm going on to review this. Like.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many people say, oh, I can't believe how awesome this is, and go on like Beer Advocate and write. Like, I'm not that guy. I don't know if other people are, but I do know that like there's a lot of people that their reviews are like revenge plots almost,
You see a little bit of that, but I think you see more positive than negative, at least from our angle. And I think I tell you guys this, like, if you don't like a beer, don't call me an a-hole, but just say that you don't like the beer and give me a good reason you don't like the beer. I don't expect everybody to love everything we release. I hope they do, but I know they won't. And typically our response to that, if we see it or we feel like a response is necessary, is like, sorry you didn't like it. Hopefully we get you with something else. And whether it's too boozy or less sweet, like, we try to brew things that we want to drink, that we think our fans want to drink as well. And at some point, there will be something that suits you. You find someone who prefers stouts. Like, we don't make a ton of those, but we do make some, or pilsners, or Heffas, or Kolsch's. So yeah, no, you got to take the good with the bad for sure.
Yeah, and like, I mean, if you strip it down to just a basic business standpoint, if I walked into any business and said, hey, I could provide you a free resource that gives you minute-to-minute updates on the feedback from the public of your publicly facing product, someone would be like, why are you giving that to me for free? They would be like, what's the catch? And that's kind of what Untapped does. That's, you know what I mean? Like, you obviously have to weed through the minutia of bullshit because there's a bunch of bullshit, but just like anything in life, the truth is not at the extremes. It's always somewhere in the middle, and if you know what to look for, you're gonna get really good information that will help you in some form or fashion. It makes so when people are just blanket hate Untapped, you're doing yourself and your company a disservice.
100%. And there are two things. My two biggest stressors with you guys is one, we try to get that beer out like the day it cans. So the one stressor is like the backlog that you guys have, right? Like in my brain, I want you guys to get a box the day after we can it and record that night, because we want you guys to experience the like fresh as hell beer that we're drinking on the canning line, or then after we take it home. And
I don't
like,
believe you. I've never got a text from you going, "Hey, where's the fucking video?"
There are some people who are like, I want to sit on
Drink this as soon as possible.
And I'm like, no, I want to drink it the day it cans, because like that's my jam. The other stressor is that I find myself watching your reviews, and I mean to like text or email you guys like follow up, because sometimes we'll be like, I don't know, value and availability, like I don't know what these guys are selling beer for, and I'm like, oh, I can answer this question, but then I don't talk to you for a few days and I forget what the heck it was I wanted to say. So that's why I think it's fun to make it a regular thing, or like be like, here's my cell phone number if you guys like have a question before you're reviewing. Or like I saw Mike drinking Swans of Lear, and like that thing clearly had like what seemed like maybe a weak seam, because that should have been bright green and like a vanilla bomb. And I meant to like be like, all right, I'm gonna send a can, and hopefully he'll have a better experience. And sometimes I just, the week gets away from me and I forget to do that, or I at least forget to address it. So that maybe is like my own personal to-do list, is agree to do these Google Hangouts and send you the beer that lands that day and force you to open it up the day. But also make my own little notes to come back at you guys and be like, no, that's exactly right what we meant.
I'll let you in. That's what the comment section is for, by the way. When we say, hey, how much does this cost, you just go in the comment section and you type it in. Pro tip.
Yeah. No, but I mean, we send some beers out where we're like maybe unsure and like are surprised. Like I will always remember the Traveling Scientist review you did outside. Like I didn't know if you were gonna like that beer. All I knew about that beer was that it was a delicious pale ale. We were stoked to use hop oils, and it was the best beer burps of any beer we've ever released. And you like blew that beer up in a good way. You were like, oh my God, this is maybe this is my favorite hop butcher beer I've ever had. And I was like, yes, like now I need more hop oil. So
yeah, it's
like
still might be, man. That beer was an epiphany, man. I love that fucking beer.
We probably could Google Hangout for another 2 hours and talk about
just about that,
the story around that beer and making more of it. So
yeah. Have did you work with those guys before? No, because you didn't. Because the second time you made a Scientist, you used distillate you already had, right?
Yeah. So the short story is that Arcane Distillery out of New York was posted up at Interboro and was vacuum distilling hop trube. And so you would get different oils depending on what beer it was or what hop combinations or hops were used. And then you could basically reuse them in a future beer. So like there are companies that sell hop oils, and we're playing around with those now to see if they were as crazy. But he came to town, and we had a table just like full of this and that, like mixing and matching and saying, all right, I really like this, or I really like that, or that one does this, or go good with that. And it was an Arcane Distillery collab that we did, and both were pales. So the intent was to do one beer. He left enough oils to do a second if we wanted to. The first one went well, and we did the second, which was like I think a Galaxy Simcoe oil. I'm not 100% on that, but
yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, some of the most unique beer that I've ever tasted and burped.
So couldn't you, at that point though, just save your own trube and somehow like give it to like another?
I tried.
No one else does. Yeah.
Like pass it out, say, hey, make me hop oil with my own
You
trube.
gotta know the secret sauce.
I guess.
Yeah. Well, I don't know much about distilling. I certainly did spend at least 3 or 4 minutes trying to find out another vacuum distillery. I offered to send him more our trube. I was like, I'll fill a truck if you want us to. But he had other things to focus on too. So it wasn't like we could just get as much as we want. But I definitely would say like that beer was impressionable enough and beloved enough, albeit maybe more so internally, that we're trying to find another way to replicate what those hop oils did. Because man, that was really tasty.
Okay, before we move on, I just want to get into the comments real quick, just so, the live people actually don't feel like they're being pushed off to the side and stuff like that. So we'll run through these real quick. There's some specific stuff for you, Jeremiah. First one that actually comes up that is noteworthy, I guess I would say. It was a guy named James. He's actually from overseas. I think he might be in Denmark right now. He actually does a beer review channel called Rampant Lion Beer Reviews, and he says, found a few Hop Butcher beers in Copenhagen, like what you guys are doing, and he actually did post reviews of those. Did you end up watching those by any chance?
I think he had Craniac, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm almost positive. Yeah, he has a long hair, skinny guy, and he's Scottish. Yeah. He dug those, and it was probably about 4 or 5 months ago. It was cool to see your beers land over there. I thought that was
yes.
And he follows it up saying that me am a sexy beast. So he's definitely an honest gentleman. So yeah, of course. Let's see, what else do we have here? Do you guys really grind over finding the best hops? I think we already get into that. Jeremiah actually talked about just rubbing hops. It goes a long way, because I don't think people appreciate, and this is not, I don't mean that in a negative way when I say that, I don't think people appreciate that hops, like, it's not just batch by batch, it's like hour by hour. Like, you could pick hops a day later, and it'd be markedly different hops. So, just to buy Citra is like saying, I'm just going to buy a Ford. I'm going to get a Ford. What kind? It's going to be a Ford. You know what I mean? Like, what kind of Ford? Are you getting a good sports car, or are you just getting the cheapest one they have? So you really have to put time and effort into that stuff, and it shows in the beer.
Yeah, you can tell from batch to batch in some breweries. Like if like you love a beer so much, and then you have another batch, you're like, maybe it's the hops, maybe it's some other ingredient, but like there are definitely multiple times where you can say that's not the same beer that I fell in love with or I had last batch, So
we've had that experience this week.
Yeah, I wasn't going to try to name names.
The funny thing about selecting hops too is that until you've tasted, like, you could rub them, you can smell them, until you've tasted the beers that you make with them, you aren't really 100% that is what you like. That is what you want to smell,
right.
To match your beer. So you really have to. It's like a multi-year thing that you learn as you go along. Like, all right, well, we smelled and rubbed this last year, and then we got this, and then it's cool that the hop companies will kind of take the characteristics and oil contents of those lots, and then they'll put more, 4, 5, 6 different lots like that of what you've indicated you liked in front of you, and then so like the idea is maybe you continue to get better, but at the very least you have the best shot of continuing to replicate based on what you did right. If you select something and you don't like it for a year, then you have to provide that feedback so you can maybe go after and kind of retrain your nose. But yeah, maybe one of the coolest 48 hours of our brewing lives was spent out in the Yakima and Portland area selecting hops last fall. And like I said earlier, like we really feel like we could trust our noses a little bit more going into it for a second time, because some of those beers that we've tried to brew exactly the same, maybe with minor tweaks, have gotten better, we feel, because we've gotten more choice lots.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Like, have you ever got a different lot and the kind of either made the beer better, or maybe you brewed it and you're like, that's definitely not even something that I was expecting? Or did you ever find maybe you got a lot of Citra, you're like, well, this Citra could go into Tavern Cut or it could go into deep dish, but it's not really what that beer kind of is going for, so I'm going to put it into this. And then you found, like, I don't know, diamond in the rough.
Yes to both. When we selected our strata last fall, instead of picking one lot, we picked 3, and we busted up our contract. We were like, all right, we want 60% of that one, 40% of that one, and 10% of that one. 20%? No, hang on, my math's off. It was like 50, 40, 10. I meant 50, 40, 10. And in our notes, it was like, this is our general purpose hazy double IPA. Like, if we're going to do a West Coast, maybe this one has a little more attitude, and maybe this one is maybe more suitable for a Pilsner. And we can't do that with every hop, but like when you find a couple different lots that you like, you got to kind of at least ask if you can.
Yeah.
And similarly on the spot market, if you happen upon something that works and it's still available, you jump on it. And that has played out for us as well. The Nelson in Kielbasa King that I hit you guys up about, I think our entire staff would agree that that's some of the best, most expressive Nelson we've ever used. And you see Nelson on a beer and you buy it and you drink it because it's a great hop. And whether or not you get white wine grapes or not, or you get something else and maybe it leans way grassy, to find something that, not that Mosaic is a hard hop to pair with, because it's not. Mosaic is a great hop on its own. But to have Mosaic and Nelson in a beer and have them work so well together, I was like, hit the guy up the next day after I tasted it. I was like, how much more of that Nelson you got? Is it the same lot?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by when I say things like I hound dog those guys constantly. It's like, what do you have? What's new? What's coming up? You going to CBC? What do you expect there? Do you get a choice lot of Galaxy in? Because Galaxy can swing both ways too. You could be like, oh yeah, I'll pay $20 a pound for Galaxy, and then you get something that's onion, garlic, grassy, and that's not the Galaxy people expect. They expect peaches and passion fruit and pineapple.
Yep.
So
I want that garlic, son. I want that grassy, son. I love that shit.
You take a risk, though. You take a risk when you jump on lots on spot if you haven't had the chance to rub it. But every now and then, you find a diamond in the rough like we did with that Nelson. It's just like, oh, I hope Kielbasa King always tastes that, because that beer made us proud and that got us excited about Nelson again.
I felt like a lot of times with Nelson, I almost get almost like a Pinot Grigio, sort of like that white wine. That Nelson, I was getting almost like white grape juice. It actually had way more expressiveness than I've had in Nelson and a lot of other beers.
Yeah, no, I don't mean to not talk about all the beers that I send you guys, because I think that each and every one in its own right, if we weren't excited about it, we wouldn't sell it, we wouldn't release it, move on to something else. But that was like Kyle had stated in his review of that, like that was one of the first times where I felt like I needed to reach out to you guys and be like, drink this now and then save one for later and drink it later and see if it gets better or worse. Because that makes us all better beer drinkers if you have a good Nelson lot and then you wait 2 or 3 weeks and then it gets better and you're like, oh, maybe that guy who told me to sit on a can was right. And that's kind of with beers like that, it's not I'm not telling people to age hoppy beers because I'm personally an advocate of drink it as fresh as possible. But if you buy a 4-pack and you want to wait 2 weeks, do it. Just don't age it for 6 months and then expect it to be a 5 out of 5 beer,
The going back to the comments real quick, the guy actually asked that was KPU 1977. He actually followed that question up with just a statement, which is Hop Butcher is nationally ranked champions of brewing. So there you go, a little bit of goodness on your shelf right there. And then we're hit with a barrage of people just fucking like, what do the kids call this? Thirsty. They're all thirsty, man. Jesus. We have a bunch of people saying, like, will you distribute in New York? Wait, you are distributing in New York? Why aren't you distributing in Connecticut? Distro in Connecticut. Please come down here. So you have, like, 19 of those comments of people just telling you to distro basically wherever they're located. So that's always nice to see what's going on.
That's awesome.
Tennessee. They want it in Tennessee. And someone at KPU actually chimes in saying, talk about Neon Green Relish, please. A fave. How do you guys name your beers?
I was going to ask that question.
Yeah.
Good.
I love that question. I feel like we have a bunch of different buckets. I'd say we try to avoid being cliche. This is just going to be like, I guess, a fire hose of thought and what's the word? I don't know. I'm blanking.
Stream of conscious.
Yes, thank you. Stream of consciousness.
And just before you get into it, he actually calls out specifically Live from Chicago. I think I know where that comes from, but also Lord Octopus. Those are the two ones that he actually calls out. Go ahead.
Live from Chicago. Yeah, that was the collab.
Okay. There's a lot to unpack there. We have some buckets.
Okay.
I feel like we have a bucket that is Chicago food centric. So the can that you're looking at on Sean's feed, A Deeper Dish. Neon green relish is obviously an element of the Chicago hot dog. Tavern Cut is the little brother, little sister to A Deeper Dish. Kielbasa King, like we're talking Chicago cuisine, but without being too kitschy about it. I feel like we like to make we like to give our beers personality, character, and let that kind of come to life with people who like it. We're not aiming to like brew like a Windy City Kolsch, because like who hasn't heard Windy City for Chicago before? Like we try to avoid that type of cliche stuff. We have what I like to call as the space nerdery bucket. Like sometimes we'll read different articles or this or that, and like you see a string of words that just looks cool together. But it is also kind of out there. It's like galactic in its own right, and so you'll see things like strange shooting star-like lights. That was a pail that we released, and Galaxy Bowl was kind of a space reference, but it was more like a bowling reference, with black light bowling and bright fluorescent colors and stuff like that. But I'd be remiss to admit that we do have a miscellaneous and completely nonsensical bucket. We have a milk stachio.
No judgment. That's cool.
It's a great beer. We also like live. You mentioned Live from Chicago, so we brewed that with Crushed by Giants, and the guy who heads that up has been a friend of ours for a while.
They're not open yet, right? Though
not open yet. Okay. But they're going to be right on the Meg Mile in downtown, and
nice.
The guy, the head brewer there, is just like a big live music fan, and we're you're thinking like what is visceral to you when you think about something or you say something aloud, and what do you see in your head when you close your eyes, and like Brant at concerts was what came to mind, and we're like, you're in the heart of Chicago when you guys open up, and we're like, Live from Chicago. That's like, yes, like that's what we should be doing. And it ended up being like one of my favorite West Coast leaning IPAs that we've done. So when we do stuff like that, whether it's a collab or not, if like sometimes those names will drive different recipes and whatnot that we're
Can everyone just collectively?
Here comes the High Life
right now. He does this every time.
Every single life.
I love it.
Get that freaking dirty looking water.
I'm going to
There's nothing wrong with High Life, Kyle.
Upstairs for a second to grab my power cable so this doesn't shut off. Like,
no worries. We'll go through the rest of the comments. We'll see you in a minute.
Yeah. Talk amongst yourself for a minute.
There you go.
I'll give you a topic.
The High Life always brings everybody happy. Oh God!
I'll be back as well.
I gotta bounce. Like I can't watch Matt drink this.
You honestly don't like Miller High Life?
No.
It's delicious. I bet you if you come back and you ask Jeremiah if he likes it, he says yes.
It's delicious.
Exactly. Exactly. You're wrong.
He's from the Midwest. That doesn't count.
You're wrong. You're wrong.
Right,
all of you are wrong. Anyway, comments
I
wise.
actually like Miller High Life. I like Miller High Life. I just don't trust people from the Midwest who say they like it.
Yeah.
Talk about beer right now. Anyway,
It's our first Google hangout. You have no reason to trust me.
Yeah. This, so there was one comment in here I was actually looking at. And it was a where was it? Triple.
Well, you're looking for it.
Go ahead.
Brought up
Yeah.
Neon Green Relish. I thought maybe that was more of a question about the name, but it ties back to what you said about like bringing hops to market, so to speak. Sabro.
Yeah.
That was the first time we ever used Sabro was in that beer, and it brought coconut water, it brought papaya juice, and it was the perfect hop for a hazy. What we didn't know about Sabro when we made that beer was how big of a bully it was. You really have to use Sabro sparingly if you're going to blend it with other hops that aren't as aggressive. But that certainly kicked off a very sincere love of ours for that hop. So when you find something and you give it a name as cool as Neon Green Relish, and then you love what it does that much, that it becomes a beer that
Yeah.
comes back 4 times a year, like that feels like a home run to us when we're able to do that.
The comment I was looking at is actually something interesting because it seems like somebody basically knows one of your brewers relatively decently, and he says he's asking, and this is Brandon Horndash. He says, was Ocean Key Justin's key lime pie PA from his Ram days, or influenced off of that? Okay, and I or like I didn't understand, like you'd have to say no blanket on that because you wouldn't be able to say yes because then that would cause a whole shitstorm.
No, I tell you yes. No,
Okay.
I tell you yes.
Okay.
So just like our names, we are a decently collaborative group, which I really enjoy. So it's not just like owners saying you need to brew this beer. The brewers aren't doing whatever they want. It's really somewhere in between. And whether you're talking about a hop combination, a beer name, a style, inspiration comes from a lot of directions for us. But I am happy to admit in 100% complete truthfulness that Ocean Key did not come from specifically Justin. Now Justin and Justin, both brewers, take what we give them and they're the ones that are brewing it and making that magic. But the combination of flavors, the name, that inspiration was not derived from his past experience.
There you go. You heard it first here on News 10. 10 wins. Anyway, and I have to actually go back. This is a comment I missed. Charles Boswell from out that way actually says, it's not a question. He just says, Peace Pizza is real Chicago pizza. Also great beer. So he's contesting Tavern Cut, I guess, versus Peace Pizza. I don't. What is Peace? Yeah.
What up, Charles? Charles knows what's up. Peace Pizza is amazing. It's a brew pub. It's like a pizza brew pub downtown.
I've been there before. Yes.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really
okay.
good.
It has been too long since I've had their pizza, and that reminds me I should order some and pick some up tomorrow and bring it back out to the burbs for the fam. That's awesome.
Okay. So we're off the comments for now. We'll go back later. What else you guys got? Because I have a bunch of different shit I want to ask. What, Kyle?
Well, I had a question, but if you have a bunch, I can...
No, go ahead.
Matt always has a bunch. Go, Kyle. He's gonna keep talking.
Kyle's like, I'll wait 45 minutes if I have
to. I know. Just you mentioned collaborations, and I have noticed, at least from what you've sent us, seems like about one per package is a collaboration, which is, in my opinion, a pretty decent percentage. So maybe just speak a little bit about collaborations. I mean, you already mentioned that it's important to be collaborative within Hop Butcher, but also just it seems like you want to be collaborative with other breweries, whether they're even open or not. So if you could speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like if you can kick it with some guys who love beer or hops or whatever as much as you do, we don't all sit around drinking hazy double IPAs. Well, even if we're making one. Sometimes it's the pills. I think the Eagle Park guys who we do Swans of Lear with came down and we were drinking our first or second pills. I think that was Supreme Being. And we'll bust out experimental hops we have or fruit purees and just like sample and taste and just have fun and then order the most disgusting Chicago cuisine we can find. Sometimes where it's like not catering in the hoity-toity sense, but you get those like catering size like dishes of taco meat and everybody makes their own burrito or
nice.
Like that's usually what kicks off collaborations. Like, what do you guys want to eat when you come here? Do you need like an Italian beef sandwich, or do you need a Chicago dog, or do you want to try something else? Like, you're really in the mood for Thai, or like, what is it? And you really just find like a good opportunity or a reason to hang out for an afternoon and make an exciting beer that you think people want to try. But the spirit of a collaboration always kind of lives within the recipe too. Like, we're trying to take what we do best with what they do best and smash it together in a beer. And sometimes that's a risk that doesn't always pay off. hopefully more often than not it does though. And you know what, it comes off maybe a little bit different for beer drinkers who want to try something from out of state, or you know what they think two in-state brewers would do together, a little bit differently than if like a brewery were just to make a beer drop in the Chicago market.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Thanks.
But and we've gotten to work with some and made some really cool friends that way as well.
Yeah.
You know, like, and then we'll see him at a beer fest like 3 months later, like, hey, what's up, man? Good to see you. How you doing? How's the family? You know, so it's about that camaraderie for us. And you know, like, it's fun to always have a little bucket list too of breweries you haven't met yet. You know, like, oh, I hear these guys are killing it in Michigan, or these guys are killing it in Tampa, and let's seek them out at the next GABF. That isn't virtual.
Yeah.
And do you guys find that it's always going to be like an in-person collab, or have you always like, okay, we can't get to you physically, obviously where we are now, but in the past, like, is it always something that you want to try to make sure it's in person, make sure someone from the other breweries there to kind of oversee it? Yeah.
No, but you're absolutely right in saying like maybe now is a little bit different, because I think we've started kind of talking, like, there are some breweries out there who maybe proposed an idea that is pretty cool. Like, maybe we do that. What else are we doing right now? And then next time when we can get together, we do get together. That doesn't need to preclude that, but yeah, I mean, I guess up to the whole like quarantine or safer at home type approach, like, are you coming to Chicago for some reason? You know, are you coming to Chicago for this reason, or hey, we're gonna be in New York, or hey, we're gonna be, you know, somewhere else. Like, what are you up to? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I'd say every time it does work, you know, you kind of end up making a bunch of new friends.
Awesome.
You actually mentioned about like this time being different, and I, you know, have to ask about like how you're functioning right now in this environment based off of what you usually do, because you know you're doing brewery drops or bottle shop drops. That's pretty much how you distribute. So you assume your kind of distribution footprint hasn't changed a ton. But how has it changed on the brewery side of things, from like supply chain, which we talked about earlier, from getting hops, getting all the things you need to produce beer? Has anything changed, or are you seeing yourself having to shift and do different things in order just to kind of keep beer flowing? Because as a, for the lack of a better term, gypsy brewer, you know, you're alone, you're by yourself, you do drops at bottle shops, so you're kind of social distancing before this even happened. So what has changed for you as a brewery in COVID times?
So that's pretty accurate. You know, we didn't position ourselves the way we're positioned because we anticipated a global pandemic. But we kind of we started off as a off-premise and packaged heavy, and packaged by, I mean cans, not even necessarily kegs. So when, say, like restaurants and bars closed, but liquor stores didn't, and people were still drinking beer and able to curbside and do their thing at home, we didn't necessarily have to change that packaging mix because we are pretty situated for that. What we did hold our breath on was if places like Binny's or you know, the retailers in the Chicago market that we did give cans to would stay open, whether or not people would still curbside or be able to, you know, get things delivered in the type of throughput that was normal. You know, like, are we going to need to make less beer? We could still make beer, but maybe we need to make less. So I would say at the beginning of that, you know, that late March, early April timeframe, we found ourselves holding our breath every single week when we would push it out. You know, keeping our guys safe, but also like working with people who were trying to stay safe, like the mobile canners and
what was your percentage of cans versus kegs before?
Like 99% cans.
Oh
wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. No, we're can heavy. Like, for the most part, we're kegging up whatever yield is left when we're done with the canning run. So,
okay.
So there are sometimes we have 0 kegs. There are sometimes we throw away a few cans. There are sometimes when we get 30 kegs. we kind of, the funny part about kegs is that all those slashies that you guys maybe shop at, or that most people buy their craft beer at, is that all of them opened up, if they didn't already have, they all opened up bars as well. So they all had, so you could try the beer and then you could buy it. So instead of kicking all kegs to bars and restaurants, it was like, all right, now these slashes that take 15, 20 cases of this or that, now they also want a keg to go with it. So it really wasn't like a paradigm shift of who we're working with, or these people prefer this or that, as much as it was just like, hold steady and make sure that we're just being smart about continuing to brew, given how people responded and whether or not they left their house to buy beer.
Okay.
So
So
by slashies though, sorry, just in case anyone in the comments or someone doesn't, you mean like a bottle shop that does pours and to go?
Yep.
Because that's only, because we don't have that in Massachusetts. Liquor laws are terrible, but
They're
I wish
very
we did. Yeah, very, 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 very archaic. To kind of follow up real quick, sorry, Matt. Before all this happened, were you still sending, even though you were 99% cans, were you still sending cans to bars for people to consume them at bars, drinking on-prem, or were you still just doing kegs for that? I guess at that
very
point,
few.
yeah, okay.
I mean, there's probably like a half dozen bars that would take our cans and still sell them, not like a retailer would sell a 4-pack, but someone sits at a bar and looks at a draft list, looks at a bottles and cans list, and says, I'll have a can of that, pour it in a glass, call it a day.
Right.
Now those places couldn't open, but many of them were allowed to shift to go or curbside. So people would order Monday, barman's banquet, burger, shot, beer, and you pick that up. Someone would order a can of this or that. But we tried to talk with those accounts, with those partners, and be like, are you guys going to stay open or not? Because you're not going to lose your place in line with us, where we're just never going to distribute to you again. As much as it's like, let's just hit pause. Well, you guys figure out how to survive, and we're going to do everything we can to help you and figure out how to survive ourselves. And we'll hit resume as soon as we possibly can.
That makes sense.
Weird times though, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What's the strip the obvious shit out of it, like family aside, worrying your business is going to stay afloat aside, like all the major stuff aside, like a trivial thing about this that you're unsure of. What's the biggest concern in that vein? Because obviously you want to keep the lights on, you want to keep your family fed, you want to do all these things, but is there something that has changed and you're curious about how it's going to affect the future, whether good or bad? Because I don't know, because out here in New Jersey, there's a lot of breweries that can now, we were never allowed to, or they were never allowed to, ship to or deliver direct to a house or ship. So maybe that law ends up finding itself as a common law now. Is there something you guys seeing changing for yourselves? Or, and again, you didn't plan to be in a pandemic, or is it just so happens that your business model is just aligned enough for this issue to survive? And I hate to use that word, but it kind of makes sense.
So I think, one of the biggest things that I think about is, and maybe some of you guys don't even know this, we, to some extent, are a gypsy brewer. I mean, we brew out of 2 different places. We're production only at both, so we get hit with the question a lot. When are you going to come to tap room? Or when I come to your tap room? Or when are you guys going to get a place of your own? And that has always been the dream. And we're working towards that as we speak. But, seeing kind of what's going on these days, like you wonder how filled a tap room could actually get anytime soon. And so for anybody trying to build that part of a business, whether or not you're talking about total space allocated, or how big's your tap room going to be, what's capacity going to be like, or like, should we even be moving this fast or this slow? That's something that you keep in your mind, which is like, you're essentially building a space for people to gather, during a time when people can't gather
Yeah.
in anticipation of some point in the future, people being able to gather again. And it's not just going to go from like 0 to 300 capacity either. Like, you're going to have to space out tables. You're going to have to, like, all of the states that are opening up are already open. Those bars and restaurants that are opening up are like taking space in streets,
20% capacity, not 100.
Yeah, 20, and so you as a brewer trying to continue to build a brewery, you don't know how to answer those questions, and you just kind of navigate as carefully but as optimistically as you can without doing anything dumb.
No, I mean, like, there's a lot of breweries that would be like, just a 100% canned distro model. That doesn't make sense. But like, if your model, which makes sense, if you could pack your tap room is you're selling 100% of your liquid on 100% of your floor, that probably was the smartest business model come the new year. You know what I mean? You're all profit. You don't have to can as much, all that stuff. But now, you know what I mean? That's how weird this is that the best business model is now the worst business model. Is it going to go back that way? Who knows? But we'll see what's what. Sorry, cutting you off, Mike, but go ahead.
No, my point was dumb. Don't worry about it.
They don't call him the best. They don't call him the best color man in the business, baby. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just saying that. No, I was gonna say that the things are changing so quickly. Like, even the main street of my city is down. It was 4 lanes, it's down to 2, and trying to let businesses spill out into the streets with their tables for the restaurants and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's a very strange time. I don't know how things are gonna change going forward. That's all.
That was a stupid point. You were right, Mike.
No, that was great. I agree.
It was a great point. I hate that you like doubted himself. It's fully applicable to what we're talking about. It's a great point, Mike. Have some self-confidence. Jeez.
We are this area is at a point right now where all of the restaurants were just notified, like, hey, later this week, early next week, you can start to open up. You can use outdoor space. They're not quite into the roads yet, but some municipalities are. So, like, of the few that we do say, or I give a case or two of cans every week to, because they'll sell through them. I'll be like, hey, can you let me know? And I don't hear back from him for a whole day. He's like, sorry, today was crazy. I'm trying to go from like 0 to 100, trying to get a patio space open just to like save my business. And I'm like, you want 2 cases or 1 case? Like, I feel so pathetic sometimes trying to ask him what he wants, because he's got 1,000 other things to worry about. But at least it's cool to see that movement, that we're moving in the direction of them being able to have and seat people and serve food. And everybody's got to kind of move at their own level of comfort with whether or not they want to go out to eat or they're fine drinking at home, but it's cool to see those guys excited and having something to do yet. And any furloughed employees or people they had to lay off, all of a sudden they need staff again, and it's like, get those people up to speed. Let's do this kind of thing. So that's actually happening right now here. So hopefully it's working well by you.
Weirdly, for a while, most of my drinking was done at Sean's house. Now, since all this has happened, I've done so much more drinking at my house. I didn't really drink that much. I would have like a glass of wine now and then. That's about it. And my beer fridge, which was packed to the gills, has been recycled, and I've been buying way more beer and drinking way more. I have like literally a pile, like, I don't know, like 8 feet high of cans in boxes to be recycled later. It's ridiculous.
I like to joke with my friends that it's all about airport rules, right?
Yeah.
9 a.m.
Yes.
9 a.m. to whatever.
Yeah.
What are you drinking there, Kyle?
Hightower Through My Lens fruitcake.
Nice.
4.5%. After doing the big triple IPA, I'm like, I better do a little lower ABV, so 4.5.
That's a good idea.
Well,
I actually just finished a 4 quarters from 4 Quarters Brewing. It's a mojito inspired sour ale with orange zest, juice, and spearmint. 4.5%.
That beer is really good.
I had to lay back a bit.
Shout out to these guys. Have you ever had anything from these guys?
I
No.
reviewed that beer 5 days ago. I didn't
Really?
post it yet. I drank it and reviewed it 5 days ago. I hadn't posted it yet.
Was it from this same canning run? Do you still have the can? 'Cause that'd be awesome.
Actually, I don't know. I actually probably showed the can date when I actually reviewed it, so I don't have that video on my computer here. But
So if I drink 16 ounces of a 10.5,
actually, it might have came from I don't know. It didn't come from Charles. It didn't come from Chuck. I think it came from somebody else. Anyway, go ahead.
And I drink 16 ounces of a 4.8% beer. What is the average ABV that I just consumed over 32 ounces, guys?
It's the correct answer. The correct answer is not enough.
On a
That is
Tuesday.
true. That is true.
It puts
But,
me right around 7.5%, which is why we make 7.5%
you led me into the perfect fucking segue, because this is what I wanted to talk about. Talk about your journey from beer, from before you opened a brewery till now, like how you've drank beer, like what you gravitate towards, what you like, what you enjoy, those kind of things. And has opening a brewery like kind of like soured or made you more positive on specific styles you didn't really love back in the day? I know we've had this conversation before, but yeah.
No, that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. I grew up in Wisconsin, so like as far as like late high school through college, like New Glarus, Spotted Cow, and anything New Glarus did, from Totally Naked, their lagers, to Fat Squirrel, Nut Brown type beers. So I had that exposure to craft beer at a decently young age, which was really cool. But I wouldn't say I had that aha moment for craft beer until I had Gumball Head by Three Floyds. And the funny story is that Jude and I had that aha moment together. And it was in 2009. We were drinking at a bar together, both as newlyweds. You know, I think him and his wife got married a couple months before my wife and I got married. We met up at a bar, looking at a beer menu, and I was like, I like wheat beers. Gumball Head, what's that? It says American wheat, and that was it, you know. And that beer is still awesome. It tastes a little different than to us, so I think that like palates change and recipes change and hops change. But I think, you know, when you latch on to something like that with a maybe history of drinking Spotted Cow and Dancing Man wheat, you never really lose appreciation for some of the beers that you felt tasted delicious back in the day. I'm pouring a Heffa. Like, I don't drink enough Heffas or Dunkels, or even just like American wheats, because I love those, but they're just not as prevalent. But when I find a good one, I'll drink a lot of it, or I'll buy
100%.
it and keep drinking it.
I seriously drink about 6 bottles of Whitehead Stepfather a week.
Yeah, and that's our brewer's favorite beer. And someday we'll get him on a Google Hangout to say it, because there's a magic of the way he says that name.
Stefana.
Yeah, yes, it sounds just like that. We get you guys to talk together. But so you like, you know, you really dissect what you like about beers like Gumball Head when that's your aha can or your aha beer. But like, you'll still lean back, like, you know, 21st Amendment, Hell or High Watermelon. Like, my wife and I could drink through a 12-pack of that. It's a wheat beer and it's watermelon, and we went to 21st Amendment like 10 years ago, and it was awesome. And but in the same vein, like, we didn't have hazy, juicy beers 10 years ago either. So like, that kind of holds its own little special place in your heart when it comes to what you like drinking. So I genuinely look forward to every Monday and Tuesday when we can.
Maybe I could be wrong.
I know that it's usually going to be something that we love coming back for, you know, the first time in 5 months, and it's going to be something completely new that I'm like, I can't wait to taste, because maybe this is the first time we used Medusa, or this is the first time we've used that experimental, or we use Incognito for the first time, and I want to see what it did to an old beer that I remember what it tastes like. So I think everything that you've drank before, to some extent, informs what you drink from here on forward. You kind of grab your little favorites from both sides of the fence, and that's usually what fills the fridge. Unless
what do you think about the news about? What do you think about the news about Three Floyds?
I was surprised by it. They closed indefinitely. I assume until there's a vaccine, where there's absolutely no risk whatsoever.
Yeah.
They do. I have to assume they do well in off premise, based on what I see.
You can only do what they did if they can survive doing that. If that.
Yeah, no, I mean they have that cachet and certainly a lot of respect from brewers around here and otherwise. But yeah, I mean I'd be lying to you if I tell you I wasn't surprised by it. I didn't see it coming.
They have
we
such
had some of our best memories.
High respect. Yeah,
that place was awesome. Is awesome. It will be awesome again.
Well, let's. What are your thoughts on that dovetail hef? Because I can't tell you I can't tell you the date, but I can tell you what I thought about it.
I think it's delicious. But like Mike, you always, I feel like maybe it's not specific to wheat beers, but I have my favorite. It's Franziskaner. You get your Franziskaner Heffa in a giant boot.
Yeah.
At like some German beer bar, and like there's just and there's an element of that style in that vessel that always comes back to a little bit of New Glarus Spotted Cow. So I feel like maybe I'm tying in childhood without actually being a child, right? So I think it's tasty. I think this is the perfect complement to caboose, a deeper dish.
Yeah, exactly. Choice. Oh no, you did. At least from an ABV standpoint, without a doubt. Actually, Charles Chuck, mind you,
he's
Boswell.
Back.
Yes, he's back. He actually has a poignant question here, a decent question, because all the other one sucks. Yeah, it says, I heard you guys talk glowingly about Half Acre and you guys collaborating with Revolution. And is there something about these established breweries you admire and want to emulate?
Were we talking about Half Acre?
Well, no, that's what Chuck was asking. Sorry.
So he was just saying, like, you guys collab with Half Acre and Revolution. And before you go into that, I just have to say Half Acre.
No, he said he's he didn't say collab. He said he talks glowingly about Half Acre and
yes,
I've heard you talk. You guys collaborated with Revolution.
Okay. Yeah.
But I was gonna say Half Acre had hands down the best brewery tour I've ever done in my life.
We as a brewery and as individuals just like fall all over ourselves about both of those.
Yeah. Listen, if the world was going to end tomorrow and you could have one beer to drink your whole life, Daisy Cutter would be on the short list.
It's
just a fucking.
I just saw Daisy Cutter hit distro here, and I was like, holy shit.
At this point, and I'm gonna pull something out of that fridge so you guys can see it. Half Acre and Revolution have been doing unbelievable things with countless beers for so long and have built their business and their brewery like I can't imagine any brewery owner or founder wouldn't want to emulate. Like those guys do so many things right and in so many different places, and it's such a volume that like I don't understand how you can't respect that. And Matt turned into the spinning wheel of death, I see.
Yeah.
But when you go a step further and you look at specific beers, whether it's a Pilsner or a Kolsch or a Porter, or, Half Acre's portfolio is pretty heavy in hops as well. Like, how could we not admire them for what they've done with hops for the last 15 years, right? I mean, whether it's a West Coast IPA or their pivot into hazies or anything they make for some reason, like Sean's like best tour, it's like you try anything they make and it's delicious. But then you get to you go a little deeper, you peel that onion back further and you get to know them as people. And whether or not you're taking a tour or you're just standing and talking to a brewer or a founder, or you're sitting in the Rev Brew Pub talking about making a collab at some point, you're just blown away by the knowledge that these people have, but also that they're willing to share. When we made Gerda, which Matt, I'm not 100% that was our
I don't-
Kolsch. I don't know that you pronounced that correctly, but I'm gonna have to go back and check your video.
Yeah.
It was like Goethe, if that's what it looks like, but it's actually Goethe. Anyway.
Oh, even if it's spelled phonetically, I'll pronounce it wrong, man. That's what I do. It's massive fucking spelling bee fucking reviews.
We make friends with guys like that, and we're like, hey, what do you think about this idea? We're about to make our first Kolsch, and that is just like humbling in a great way, because they've made a Kolsch 1,000 times and we've made it 0 times, but they're like, try this at this temp, and what you're doing looks good, and you get that little pat on the back, and that like cements a friendship that never goes away, because next time you're at their brew pub eating or drinking, or a year goes by and you're like, let's brew a collab again. Hell yeah, we will, because I just like hanging out with those guys, and our whole crew feels the same. So like, yes, we could learn a million things from those guys, whether it's how to grow a brewery to the size of their breweries, or it's how to make a Kolsch or a Pilsner. But the truth is that they're just amazing human beings, and every now and then a brewery you admire for the quality of beer that they make meshes with the quality of humans you meet, and like just blows your damn mind. And Half Acre and Rev are both examples of that. And I think for a lot of Chicago and otherwise, because I hear you guys talking about Daisy Cutter, and it's like, yeah, like that beer jams. Like if you look at 100 articles about like quintessential Chicago breweries or quintessential Chicago beers, I guarantee you Daisy Cutter will never be lower than the second beer on all of them. And it's well deserved.
It gets such horrible care out by my way. I don't know if it's distros or whatever, but like I'll see Daisy Cutter every time I get all excited, and I reach in a cooler and it's just like super old. Not that I'm a date Nazi, but it's like, just give me like 2 months. Just give me something within the past 2 months, and we'll see Daisy Cutter out here in Jersey that's like 6 months old, and it's such a bummer.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Hey, if you want to add that to the list, I was talking to Mike about this last night. If there's ever anything that isn't Hot Butcher in this market that you guys want to try, tell me so I can send it, because you shouldn't be drinking 6-month-old Daisy Cutter. And I bet if I told the Half Acre guys that you were drinking 6-month-old Daisy Cutter, they would be set with whoever their distributor is out there.
Yeah, just send me I don't know, extremely old vintages of VSOJ. That's all I want. Like 10-year-old vintages of VSOJ. That's it.
Did I send you guys the Rev collab we did last year?
Rev from Florida?
What?
Oh no, Revolution Club.
Revolution.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So we did a party guile where we did like so essentially what we did was make a hazy double and a clean and clear West Coast inspired pale, but like in a fashion where the hops and ingredients that we used in each would be complementary to each other if you decided to also cuvee it and just mix them.
What?
And it was based on this like base and superstructure, like Marxist type like thought. It was unbelievable.
I was
honestly
gonna say,
one of the coolest collabs we've done. I don't know.
Has any brewery ever thought to brew 2 different beers that if you blended them together, you would get something that they expected?
I don't see the can. I have it somewhere, but there are 2 cans coming from the same batch, and we like fired the first runnings off of one into one fermenter, and then the second runnings off into another, and that was the weaker beer. It was one of the coolest collabs we've done. But this summer we're planning to brew with those guys again on like the beer or the little piece that connects those two. So we'll brew all 3 beers, which I'm really excited for. Even if we have to do like social distancing, virtual, like that would be something that we're going to do because it's amazing. And
okay,
awesome.
Okay,
that's epic.
But hang on, before you make this point, I want to go back to Daisy Cutter real quick. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Do you have Galactic Double Daisy Cutter? Is that what you're about to show us?
No, I got something crazier.
Oh.
This is like a super cool intersection of like what I think Hot Butcher geeks out about the most, and Half Acre doing like just Half Acre, just half acre in. You know what I mean? So this beer, is Rawaka Double Daisy Cutter.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Rawaka is a fun hop out of New Zealand that is terrible agronomically, but like a really exciting hop. And they basically took their Daisy Cutter chassis and dry hop this beast with Rawaka that they got from Hill Farmstead, and it's a hazy double pale that like completely blew my mind and like geeked me out about a hop that we will have soon.
Yeah.
We can't get it yet. We
Sure.
haven't, like, it's coming any minute.
Well,
but,
because Sean buys it all. That's why you haven't had it, because he's like
There are two
literally
breweries.
he masturbates in the Rawaka every night. I assume that's what happens.
Well,
there are 2 breweries that had contracts last year, but there's a new hop company that we're working with too. So like we're excited to get our hands on this. But like to love what you love about Daisy Cutter, and then having Double Daisy Cutter, and then not only taking like a beloved beer like that, but then like putting a hop that we've never been able to brew with on top of that, and then have it be amazing, is like triple goo, like just like I'll drink all of it. And I didn't have enough to send all of you guys, otherwise I'd be like, here's all the beer, try them, tell me what, I'm really geeking out about this. But I'll totally send you more of this Dovetail Heffa or any Three Floyds Gumball Head, or like whatever you guys want to try. If I can get a hold of it, I will. Even if it's just like fresh ass Daisy Cutter, I'm game. But I can't send you this because I don't have that many of them.
I would wonder how big like the trade market would go nuts if they wrote on the can hops courtesy of Hill Farmstead.
They what I dug about what Half Acre did with this beer was they gave props to how they like nabbed those hops. They're like, yeah, we reached out to our friends at Hill Farmstead, and like I've asked no less than 2 or 3 breweries to like hook us up. I was like, I'll take 44 pounds, and they're like, sorry, we're gonna use it all. And I'm like, I get it, based on what we contracted and what we anticipate getting, but like it's not easy. And whether you're a beer consumer or a brewer trying to source a specific ingredient, like tell somebody they can't have something.
Of course.
Watch them climb mountains to get it. They will drive to 100 account or liquor stores, beer stores, whatever, trying to find. I did it. Pipeworks back in the day when they only distributed enough to support their what was that platform called? Kickstarter. They like distributed enough to satisfy the Kickstarter donors. And I swear to God, I hit like 6 accounts trying to find that first batch of Ninja versus Unicorn. Like you tell a brewer he can't find Rawaka and watch him spend like 2 years trying to find it, and to almost be. We have a lot of fun with stuff like that. So like we're about to have Rawaka. I've spent like there's a cool story that I won't like long story, you guys. We're going on 2 hours here, but like I've spent like 4 years trying to get this specific hop from Australia, and the hop company just wouldn't respond. Our hop suppliers that work with them would be like, yeah, they're not distributing to the US. And this year they said yes. Like I paid attention to when harvest was happening, and I was like, hey, I take 11 pounds, but like really want like 88 or like 220 or 440. And they said yes. And we did something like this with the actual farmer in Australia, like late in the day. So it was like early in his day. And like, I can't tell you how like worthy of geeking out for people like us that do what we do to be able to do that and talk to the farmer and like know that in 2 or 3 months that we were going to be able to use this hop, and that we'd be the first ones outside of Australia to use it, but like the third brewery in the world to use it.
Wow,
that's
is
awesome.
Just like,
was that the one a few weeks ago?
Which one?
Was that the one that a few weeks ago you were talking to the?
I don't think you know what you're talking about, Kyle.
I don't want to blow up your spot. No, you had texted me. we were talking about our days, and you had gotten off the phone with a farmer in Australia.
Yes,
And I've
that was
been
him.
grading, I'm a teacher, I've been grading essays all day, and we compared who had the cooler
Yeah.
day, and you won by a landslide.
That's cool. That's
No,
cool.
it's
But
not.
yeah, that was him. That was him,
Yeah.
and it was fun as hell to talk to and be like, what do you want to pair this beer with, or what do you want to pair this hop with in this beer, and kind of like throw it back at a farmer and be like, what are you gonna do? Like what would you do if you were brewing the beer? Because like that to us brings that collaboration to life more. It'd be like, yeah, if he wants to pair it with Vic Secret or Sabro because he's never done it, or he thinks that like let's do that and let's figure out how to make it work. But also like how cool is it to be like the first brewery or the third brewery in the world, but first brewery outside of Australia to ever use this or get their hands on it. Like I was willing to like build a pirate ship and drive it there myself. It's amazing though, like the lengths of which you're willing to go to try something like that. And like we touched at the beginning of this hangout, like sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it does, and you get your next Sabro or your next Strata. Sometimes you try a hop that seems amazing because a hop company said this is summery fruit, citrus, and tropical, and then you try it and it like smells and tastes like your grandma's spice rack, and you're like, oh, I really had high hopes for this hop. When it works, it's super fulfilling, and it makes that chase all the more alluring and exciting to try to track down that hop or be the first to use this hop, or like bring in XP 6300 because supposedly it brings this and it'll complement that, and if it's amazing, then sweet. When it gets a name, we'll switch the name on the label, and like that's the stuff that keeps us going.
I think Matt and I both but ask a question. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So we have an actual comment in here, and it's something I wanted to kind of lean into real quick, because we talked about earlier about like, everybody talked about you not making stouts and all that kind of stuff, but you make a decent amount of stout, and actually one of my favorite beers of all time you make, which is the Colombian Exhibition beer. That's my favorite beer that Hop Butcher's ever made. It's a coffee stout, and it is absolutely fantastic.
Oh, Mike will love it then.
Yeah, but he would though. That's the thing. He eats coffee stouts. You would love this one. Anyway, we actually have a comment from somebody who said, "Can we expect a public release of any barrel aged beers? Slow Death at Fobab, I thought should have been awarded."
Why did he say public release? Does that mean that you guys have?
It was a Fobab is a festival of barrel aged beers, and it was just like a festival only beer.
Who answered that question?
That would be Brian Nuss. Brian, that's
a super cool question. All right, so because we're production only at two other people's breweries, we don't have the type of space that most breweries have to dedicate it to barrel aging. That said, we have some, and we've dabbled. It's an annoying process to dabble in the small scale that we dabble, because you really have to work keg by keg. Most breweries can barrel age, 20 barrels, and then blend it as they need be at their leisure into a bright tank, carbonate it, can it or bottle it, and then move on. But when you only have, I'd say, a half dozen to a dozen barrels full of, a stout or otherwise barrel aging, really what you're doing is you're creating one-off for certain accounts to get, because you don't have enough to blend and package in like cans or bottles. And that is essentially how we've dabbled, right? So like we had a peach brandy barrel with World's Colombian, we had apple brandy, we had bourbon, we had Weller, and then we had like 4 Buffalo Trace, bourbon barrels. And we thought to ourselves, like, we'll play around, we'll blend a little bit. Maybe we'll adjunct with vanilla or otherwise, but let's try to do something tasty. And so essentially what we did was we created one-off kegs. So I'd say 1 to 4 sixtels worth of a certain beer that we gave an identity to. And then 2 of those that we thought were best of, we brought to Fobab, which is the festival of barrel-aged beers last year. and that is where they tasted that. So I would say that the public and official answer to that question would be that at some point, when we have our own place and we can dedicate more real estate to barrels, I think that that's definitely a space that we would like to play more in, but not one that we could say like, yeah, in 3 months or 6 months, we're going to release canned barrel aged beers because we still don't have the space to do that. But super cool to like talk to someone and answer a question that went to Fobab last year, had that beer, enjoyed it, and thought of it. Because we're not known for our barrel aged beers, at least yet. Hopefully,
Yeah, I thought that was worth bringing up. So yeah, good question.
John, you had a question?
Oh, no,
sorry.
I totally forgot it.
Okay.
Mike's just flexing on everyone with that sweaty Trillium bottle.
What do you got there?
Before we move any further, we're in an
Peter.
hour and 45 minutes. We're going to run to 2 hours, then we're going to cut it short because all of us have lives and we want to do things. So let's put a cap on this. We have 15 minutes left. People ask questions. The panel here. Fire anything you've thought of or haven't thought of
I
asking
have
yet.
two quick questions.
Yep.
All right. So one, Mike corrects us if we say hop butcher, but I've heard you, Jeremiah, say hop butcher many times. Is it okay to say hop butcher instead of always saying hop butcher for the world?
Yes. Here's
Okay.
so here's how I'll frame this, right? Because I think context is important. First of all, Mike pours beers the way beers should be poured. Secondly, I've always likened like from the point we pondered whether or not we should call our brewery that, to like having that be the new name of our brewery, to I don't know, 4 years later, here we are, Hop Butcher for the World. I've always phrased it like Hop Butcher is like our first name and Hop Butcher for the World is like our full name. So I feel like if you're going to dive into who we are, the whole name is important, but like calling us Hop Butcher for the World every single time you're going to refer to us is like calling me by all three of my names, with senior added to the end for no reason every single time you're talking to me, which would just like, it's exhausting. So like you could say Hop Butcher. I actually heard a rumor from some of our accounts that people were like shortening Hop Butcher to Hop, and I was like, come on, that's just lazy. Like,
But
that new hop, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm cool.
There has to be
like,
that small. There has to be that small little thing about like you when your mom calls your full name and you jump to attention. So like if someone says Hop Butcher, you're like, yeah, Hop Butcher. But if someone says Hop Butcher World, it's like someone calling me Matthew instead of Matt, and I'm like, oh, I'm paying attention now. Like they call me Matt. Yeah, it's serious now.
I dive into a little bit of like the dissection, or I guess maybe the anatomy of the name on the about page of hopbutcher.com. But like we really try to live up to that namesake in everything that we do, the beers that we make and name, but also like where we want to go from here. And like that has been a really rewarding choice. I mentioned earlier, like asking Dan if he'll illustrate every one of our beers was the best choice we've ever made. Like, I think like at the time, switching our name from South Loop Brewing Company to Hop Butcher for the World was like caused a lot of agitation. Like, oh, did we just spend a year like building equity in this name that now we have to give up? And like everybody, including ourselves from that point on, has been like, that was one of the better choices you guys have made, right? Like that's a way cooler name.
Yeah, it's a sexier name. It's a cooler name.
Like our hope really was like that it spoke to who we were, what we did, and that like if we ever decided to do anything out of state or out of market, it wouldn't depend on someone's understanding of like Chicago's neighborhoods, but like, oh, I like hoppy beers, or like that's a cool name I've never heard. It's not traditional in the sense of like XYZ Brewing Company either. So like it stands out on a list, and like maybe that catches someone's attention and they try our beer once and they like it, hopefully, and voila. That's the hope. But it's you are more than welcome to call us Hop Butcher.
You should see our group text. Mike is constantly nonstop.
No, that's not true. I did that for a week because it was funny.
No.
Go 2 or 3 weeks. It's
Yeah,
so
it was,
And then
it was
I got sick of it myself.
it overstayed its
It-
welcome.
it- if it makes you guys feel any better, like I'll abbreviate sometimes too, like HBFTW.
yeah.
And a lot of people will take the for the world and be like hot butcher for the win on beers they
Yeah.
are checking in and like, which I appreciate, especially because that FTW part is fun.